Hello friends, welcome back to strategic management, and we are on the verge of culminating our thought process towards the understanding related to environmental dominance, wherein we want to think about when to align with the environment, when to influence the environment, how to do that, and when to actually get influenced completely by the environment. We have talked about such kind of examples briefly with a perspective of vision and strategic orientation, strategic pathway, and then we have tried to analyze how we have to choose the strategic steps. I have been talking about that. Last time I talked about resource based kind of a thought process given by authors, wherein we tried to analyze how we have to look in ourselves with the perspective of resources we have. Now in this session I would be taking you towards another side of the thought process, wherein IO model, industrial organizational model of above average rate of returns is there. Then I would be talking briefly about resources, capabilities and core competencies, and then I would be trying to collate that with value chain perspective, because ultimate objective are two, wherein we should be reaching to a stage wherein we should say that strategy is all about strategically managing value chains, strategically managing things, value chains and value webs. Those things are value chains and value webs, and management of strategy for prosperity and opulence. That is how we differentiated values, culture, vision at large, then business vision and so on. So that is the perspective. Now let me take you towards the industrial organizational model of above average rate of returns, which explains the external environment's dominant influence on the choice of strategy and the actions associated with it. So environment's dominant influence on the choice of strategy, and choice of strategy we have talked about when we were talking about the life cycle situation, wherein I said that we have to think in terms of propelling growth, stabilizing the saturation or turning around the decline and so on. And then we started talking about cost or differentiation and those kind of things, and wherein definitely we would be talking about cost and differentiation also later on. But choice of strategy, what kind of strategic choices we have to make, and in my subsequent sessions when I would be talking about business level strategic and strategic planning, you would realize that there also this kind of a thought process would dominate us, especially with the perspective of competitive thought process, how to beat the competition. So dominant influence on the choice of strategy and the actions associated with it. Specific actions we have to take in association with choice of strategy. The IO model suggests that firms earn above average returns by studying the external environment effectively as the foundation for identifying an attractive industry and implementing an appropriate strategy in it. So resource based was thinking from the side of the resources. Here we are talking about industrial organizational model. Let us see what this model further talks about, and we are continuously using the reference this thought process from Hitt, Ireland and Hoskisson, Strategic Management, Concept and Cases, Competitiveness and Globalization, published by Cengage. The logic of the IO model is that a set of industry characteristics, so we have a particular, we have a structure of characteristics around a particular kind of an industry, including economies of scale, barriers to market entry. We have heard about these words when we were talking about five forces model. So including economies of scale, barriers to entry market, diversification, product differentiation, the degree of concentration of firms in the industry, how many firms are concentrating in that industry, and market frictions determine the profitability potential of an industry or a segment of it, as well as the actions firms should take to operate profitably. You may think of any industry at this moment. I would be using some example to demonstrate that as well in due course of time, to collate everything whatever we would be discussing in this segment through a brief case study also. But you may think in terms of cement industry, mining industry, software industry, textile industry, food industry, and try to think about how to look at this, to look at those industries with this kind of a model framework. Now let us see what this model says. Study the external environment, especially the industry environment. What are the basic characteristics of this industry? So, the external environment is associated with general environment, industry environment and competitor environment. How dominant are the competitors, what kind of a technological advantages they have, how long they have been surviving in this industry, what kind of supply chain control they have and so on. For example, if you are going to become a coffee manufacturer, then you have to look at existing coffee manufacturers with coffee producers, I should say, with the perspective of same orientation. Now, second, locate an industry with high potential for above average rate of returns. How to look into high potential industry? Probably, people entering into software and those kind of industries, and AI based kind of industries, industry largely which is working on, or let's say AI based or software based retail industry, they would have thought of these kind of things. Basically, Amazon would have thought of this, and several other, Bloom Global would have thought of this when they were entering into supply chain based kind of software orientation and so on. So, an attractive industry, wherein an industry whose structural characteristics suggest above average rate of returns. And this is, although these models, they hint on the choice of industries for entering into businesses for earning above average rate of returns, the basis is, and which I demonstrated last time, that basis is that we have to maximize our gains. But again, the point is that if you have entered into industry and you want to diversify at that moment, then also you have to think about that. Or you are very initial player, and by incidence of your orientation or supply of funds, or let us say access to capital, you have entered into that, then also you have to think in terms of those. And if you have entered and you want to grow, then also you have to analyze these kind of things somehow. Preceding three are more valid in terms of this kind of an argument. Identify the strategy called for attractive industry to earn above average rate of return. Now, there is an identification of the strategy formulation, and we will be talking about that when choice of strategy and business level strategy perspective is to be there. So, strategy formulation, selection of strategy linked with above average return in particular industry. That is how industrial organizational model influences the strategic choices. Develop or acquire assets and skills needed to implement the strategy. When Western countries, they did not have that those large number of people who had to be associated with the software industry for propelling it vast, in terms of the span of that industry, they started bringing in people from India and these kind of countries for good jobs over there, and our universities, for aligning ourselves with whatever is happening in the world, introduced modern courses which were supported by those organizations. Our graduates, they started studying that, and they were being brought by those kind of organizations which were developing in Silicon Valley and those kind of places wherein large number of organizations were coming up, and our graduates were being absorbed there, and still it is happening to an extent. So, develop or acquire assets and skills needed to implement the strategy. Assets and skills required to implement a chosen strategy. Again, choice of strategy. And now we are moving towards strategic choices, but before that I would be talking about competition, specific competitive landscape perspective by demonstrated through red ocean kind of an understanding, and then I would be taking you immediately towards blue ocean kind of a perspective, wherein so that we are clear about that when and how to think about competition kind of a sphere and beyond competition kind of a sphere, or pushing aside the competition kind of a sphere. Use the firm's strengths, its developed or acquired assets and skills to implement the strategy. Now, once you have analyzed this, you know how to look into the strength of your organization, then use it for strategy implementation, selection of strategic actions linked with effective implementation of the chosen strategy, and then superior returns. So, this is how IO model works. Now, let us move our discussion towards adding on the perspective on resources. We have talked about that, but let us see this structure. Resources, and for this we are referring to J. Barney 1991, Firm Resources and Sustained Competitive Advantage, and you see continuously authors are referring to competitive advantage. When we will be talking about blue ocean, I would be telling you still there is a thought process around competitive advantage, but here we are pushing aside the competition. That is the difference actually, and just keep that in mind till then. So, Firms, Resources and Sustained Competitive Advantage, published in Journal of Management. So, here the authors talk about resources are of two types largely, tangible and intangible. And then tangible resources are divided into physical resource and organizational resource, organizational capabilities. I will be coming to that. So, physical resource, the kind of infrastructure you have, the kind of technological support you have, the kind of the physical acumen you have generated around you. And also, the authors are not saying that financial resources are dependent on physical resources. So, directly the line takes us towards two more kinds of resources, the financial resources and technological assets, wherein what kind of a machinery, plant machinery, those kind of things, or software we have built up around us basically. For example, for Amazon, technological resources is in terms of their copyrighted software, or their acumen in terms of their software. For someone having most modern machinery, automated plants, Lego toys, they have their technological assets in terms of their machine and so on. Then there are intangible resources. Intangible resources are divided into two: human assets and intellectual capital. Now, these are softer, but they have to be acknowledged with a perspective of tangibility associated with them. What kind of a tangible effect they may bring in due course of time. Human assets, what are humans capable of, what they can do, how they can be, their focus can be directed towards generating the acumen which can be converted into a tangible effect. Intellectual capital, how vast they can think. For example, ISRO, they have a lot of intellectual capital, they have gathered that and they have gone around and they have landed on the moon and they have gone around the sun and so on. See, and then relationships, that is very crucial, very critical, associated with culture, values also. How you develop relationships in a very smooth manner within the organizational framework and outside also, basically with the customers, your stakeholders and so on, and how they are sort of, I may use this word transparent, but then sort of smooth, not conflicting in as far as the structure goes basically. Because most of the times humans, they have a conflicting thought process around relationships. So, intangible again traverses into brand, company image and reputational assets. Although these assets, as you know, are converted into entities in balance sheets. So, brand can be expressed that way, but then brand and brand power is usually felt by the customers, the stakeholders, even the employees. For example, not many people wish to work with an X kind of a company. So, that is where that intangibility gets converted into tangibility, and that is the brand power which actually leads so many people around, so many companies around the world. And for understanding it deeper, you may access to my videos and recordings and the subject on product and brand management. And then there is another intangible element of company culture and incentive system. How do you incentivize people in terms of monetary and non-monetary incentives, how you make their lives comfortable, how you make their lives purposefully associated with whatever you wish to, as far as the deriving the strength out of their association, and how you can strongly build the culture around as far as those things go. But here, tangible resources, they have a deep relationship with intangible resources and vice versa, and they support each other. That is why they are cumulatively called as resources. So, everything from this side to that side. Now, how do we categorize those? Just briefly see what authors have to say, and now we are referring to Thompson, Petraff, Gamble, Strickland and Jain. And the name of the book is Crafting and Executing Strategy, 19th edition, The Quest for Competitive Advantage, Concepts and Cases, McGraw-Hill Education. And we are also referring to Hit, Hoskisson in Ireland for some parts of understanding related to these subjects basically. We have referred to both the text, Strategic Management, Concepts and Cases, Competitiveness and Globalization. So, tangible resources are assets that can be observed and quantified, as we have just discussed. Production equipment, manufacturing facilities, distribution centers and formal reporting structures are examples of tangible resources. Tata Steel plant, BYD facilities and so on. And intangible, BYD is a company which has a very large space in EVs and renewable energy. Intangible resources are assets that are rooted deeply in the firm's history, accumulate over time and are relatively difficult for competitors to analyze and imitate, because you have built those in due course of time. Brand, human resource, their capability, you have built that. It takes a lot of time to do that. The reputation garnered by Tata Group is a big example. We have been referring to this example since the beginning of the course, because this definitely holds several unique elements to it. Now, let us see capabilities. A capability is the capacity of a firm to perform some internal activity competently, what you are capable of. In Hindi, there is a word called samarthya associated with this word capability. You know, how you convert your thought process, your perspective around exerting as far as your competence goes. Organizational capabilities are developed and enabled through the deployment of a company's resources. Exactly. You see, exerting your competence, exemplifying your competence. So, virtually all organizational capabilities are knowledge based, residing in people and in a company's intellectual capital, or in organizational processes and systems which embody tacit knowledge. That means cumulatively in your resources. So, capabilities are deeply associated with resources. That is why we always talk about resources, capabilities and core competencies, because they that is how it traverses. Core competencies are capabilities that serve as a source of competitive advantage for a firm over the rivals. So, you have capabilities. Now, how would you exemplify, exert or put up in front of others that this capability is my core competency, with a perspective of that they serve as a source for competitive advantage for a firm over its rivals. They cannot do that. For this also we are referring to Hitt, Ireland and Hoskisson. Core competencies distinguish a company competitively and reflect its personality. This is what I am capable of. This is what I reflect. This is this is my personality. This is my uniqueness, and this is how I have to be distinguished. Core competencies emerge over time through an organizational process of accumulating and learning how to deploy different resources and capabilities. So, not only those can't be imitated, those are your personality traits. Every organization has a personality reflected through its culture, values and how you do things. So, authors also say that through organizational process of accumulating and learning how to deploy different resources and capabilities. So, deployment of those resources, executing those resources, how best you can do that. For example, you design an automotive, how uniquely you do that, and then how uniquely you sell it basically. You design a wristwatch, Titan did that, how uniquely they designed the wristwatches and how uniquely and effectively they sold those, deployed those, they developed those core competencies around their stream of work. Innovation is thought to be a core competence at Apple, for example, as a capability. Now, you see, core competence is innovation. They keep on innovating, and how are they doing that? By utilizing their capabilities. So, as a capability, R&D activities are the source of core competence. So, they are continuously capable of developing new research and development processes. By emphasizing its R&D capability, Apple can innovate in ways that create unique value for customers in the form of its products it sells, suggesting that innovation is a core competence for Apple. So, they are utilizing all their resources along with or for their capabilities in terms of research and development, along with their capabilities in terms of research and development, and converting innovation, converting everything into innovation, which becomes their core competence. Now, again, it is very interesting when authors talk about how to build core competencies. So, they have given a framework, building core competencies. The 4 criteria of sustainable competitive advantage. You see, you have built core competency, now you have to sustain the competitive advantage which you have achieved through developing your core competencies. So, there are 4 basic criteria which authors have tried to express. First is valuable capabilities. Valuable, wherein you can add a tangibility, a value, you can convert that into a measurable entity that converts itself into a value for your business or for your work. Valuable capabilities help a firm neutralize threats or exploit opportunities. That is, no one can come near you basically, and that adds value to whatever you do, that can be converted into money or further resources or benefits to the customers in whatever way it can be measured. Rare capabilities are not possessed by many others. For example, lot many people are mining, but the way they are mining, so that can be a differentiation in terms of rare capability, and in terms of unique designs, or let us say Apple kind of organizations or Patanjali kind of organizations or LIC in India, they they have very unique capabilities. For example, Amul, they have very unique capabilities wherein lot many elements are rare as far as the capabilities go. Costly to imitate capabilities. Many times you have to pay for IPs, you have not generated those IPs in time, that is one part, or you have developed a process through a meticulous understanding of the process, scientific understanding of the process in a long term, and no one else can reach there basically. So, historical, a unique and a valuable organizational culture or brand name, that is one part, we have talked about that. Ambiguous cause, the causes and uses of a competence are unclear. Social complexity, interpersonal relationships, trust and friendship among managers, suppliers and customers. So, lot many intangibilities are associated, which definitely are associated with the tangibilities as such also. Non-substitutable capabilities, no strategic equivalent is there, and that is why you would realize that many companies, they keep on growing, and they are being kind of admired for whatever they have been doing in due course of time, and people say that they are one of their own kind. That is where this kind of a discussion comes in. Now, let us look at a unique example which will actually justify our discussion almost at the end. Maersk, this is a group which was founded in 1904, is a Danish global shipping and logistics company, very large organization, and you would realize whenever you go somewhere, you would find containers and Maersk is written there, several ships, Maersk is written there, and so on. The company employs over 100,000 employees, has a fleet of 700 plus container vessels. The group is spread over different vectors including Maersk Line, Maersk Oil, APM terminals, Maersk Drilling and APM shipping services. These are the verticals. Now, you see A.P. Moller Maersk's revenue from financial year 2009 to financial year 2022 in million US dollars, 81,529 million US dollars. That is the kind of volume of business they are going for as far as their kind of business goes. How a company belonging to a small country has grown such large, so big, what they have been doing through the verticals, Maersk Line, Maersk Oil, APM terminals, Maersk Drilling and APM shipping services and so on. It's very unique element which we must discuss in the light of the preceding discussions we have just had. So, you see, they have resources, human, in terms of human capital, infrastructure, fleets of vessels. Now, all these three elements can be described with the perspective of, Maersk invests heavily on port terminal and digital infrastructure when we talk of infrastructure. Maersk operates in more than 130 countries with 7,800 square meter of warehousing capacity worldwide. Maersk, in terms of fleets of vessels, consists of 310 owned and 362 chartered vessels. These vessels averaged to an operating capacity of 4,162,000 20-foot equivalent units and so on. The description is on their website about us when you will go there, and you would realize that their capabilities have traversed into technological innovation, global network, supply chain management and environmental sustainability also, wherein they have been focusing upon leadership in the decarbonization of logistics. People thrive at work by providing a safe and inspiring workplace, and governance is related to operate based on responsible business practices. Now, how this is reflected in being their core competence. So, core competencies are associated with integrated logistics solutions which they have developed in due course of time, and not many companies can imitate those. Global spread and network strength and operational excellence. Now comes in very important element of value and value chain, and I will briefly talk about this before I would be traversing into my next discussion on another subject which is integrated with this. So, value is amount buyers are willing to pay for what a firm provides them. Value is measured by total revenue, a reflection of price of firm's product commands and units it can sell. Creating value for buyers that exceeds the cost of doing so is the goal of any generic strategy. Michael Porter talks about that. And value chain is the concept which is being propelled by Michael Porter. So that is why we have access to this text from written by Michael Porter, 1985, Competitive Advantage: Creating and Sustaining Superior Performance. So a value chain is a set of activities that an organization carries out to create value for its customers. I have talked about that briefly and definitely referred to Michael Porter, but now to collate everything what we have discussed up till now, I am briefly reiterating few of the elements. Competitive advantage cannot be understood by looking at a firm as a whole. It stems from the many discrete activities in a firm performs in designing, producing, marketing, delivering and supporting its products. A firm's value chain and the way it performs individual activities is a reflection of its history, its strategy, its approach to implement its strategy, the underlying economies of the activities themselves. And this is the value chain structure which Michael Porter has talked about. I have mentioned that earlier also, but now with reference to the models we have talked about, the strategic choices elements which we have discussed, the cost or differentiation perspective which we have discussed, and especially the resource capability and competence perspective which we are discussing in terms of competitive advantage. So, firm infrastructure, human resource management, technology development, procurement, which he calls support activities. I told you earlier also that many of these now they have traversed towards being primary activities rather than just the support activities. For example, in many cases human resource is the asset and is the primary activity, or primary activities are associated with acquiring such human resource. So, the model has not diminished, the model remains as it is. It can be, everything can be understood within this framework, but many lines are getting blurred or diminished, which definitely has to be acknowledged. So, then primary activities are inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales and services, and that is how the whole story gets built up in value chain model which was proposed by Michael Porter. So, here there is an example which defines with some discretion defines what we have been talking about. William Penn is an organization which markets and produces luxury pens. So, here Nikhil Ranjan, founder and managing director of William Penn, says that writing is therapeutic. It is one of the best ways to disconnect because it is engrossing and can be done alone at any time in any place. And that is how they have crafted themselves to become an organization which markets so many brands and produce their own brands as well, in terms of pens and so on, luxury pens. So, launched as a world class alternative to neighborhood stationery store, Bengaluru based William Penn now has its own label and products, tie-ups and premium brands like Montblanc, Cross, Waterman, Sailor, Schaefer, and a turnover of rupees 100 crores. I chose this example specifically to suggest that in today's computer age, when people are not writing so much, William Penn kind of organization is doing exceptionally well. So, they have actually thought of themselves with the perspective of resource, capabilities and core competence. I would be coming back to you with an addition to our discussion, and we will progress in sequence, reaching to a culmination wherein we would try to understand that strategic management is there to strategically managing value chains and value webs and how we manage the strategy itself. I will be catching up back with you very soon. Till then, goodbye.